Hello, hello. It's Brent Agin, Dr. A, with Q&A with Dr. A. Thanks for being here. Hopefully you guys are going to find some good information out of this conversation. Today's a great topic because I've spent a lot of the second half of my career really focused on brain health. And so I'm excited because, I think once we kind of finish this discussion, you guys are going to have a new appreciation for brains. I think it's one of those unfortunate things that we forget about, and because it's not talked about that much, particularly. But I've been practicing for about 22 years in functional medicine, and probably about 11 of them I've really started, the second half I really started focusing on brain health. Now looking back, I wish I would have spent my first 10 or 11 years on brain health, because knowing what I know now, it really is the key to success as far as maximizing vitality, being happy, living the way we want to live. And so let's make some sense out of this. So first thing I want to do is just talk a little bit about exactly, go over some of the brain specifics, talk a little bit about, what is it, why is it important, what are some of the signs of brain disorder, brain disease, what's causing our brains to not function that well, and then of course what we can do to make them better. So anyway, so let's just talk about the brain. The brain is obviously our most important organ. It's we talked for a while about mitochondrial health, and we talked about how mitochondria are our powerhouses of our cells. Different organs of our body have different amounts of mitochondria. Our eyes, obviously, our heart, and our brains have more mitochondria than any other organs. And so the reason for that is because our brain is the command center. It is the most important organ, and it is the thing that basically controls our behaviors, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. Our autonomic nervous system controls our natural everyday activities to keep us alive. And we have an innate responsibility. Our bodies are built to have this innate response to protect the brain. And so if you have any sort of a trauma, anything that happens to you, your first thing that's going to happen is that your body is going to go into self-defense and try to protect the brain. So that means if you get a severe laceration and you're bleeding, your brain will start directing all blood flow away from anywhere else in your body to give blood flow to the brain, to keep the brain healthy and alive, because without it, you are not going to function, as we know. So it is pretty important, it's obviously, when you kind of think about that, you realize, wow, it's a pretty important gland or organ. And so then you got to start thinking, going, okay, well, why do we have so much, why do we not pay more attention to the brain when, we have all this focus on weight loss and all these focuses on treating different mental illness and all these different diseases, but yet, you even use COVID. COVID came out and boom, we had medications for COVID, we had vaccine for COVID, but yet here we are and we have zero cures for brain disease. Not one cure for mental illness, not one cure for neurodegenerative disease. And so you wonder, why are we not coming out with more therapies for the brain? And yes, it is complex, but still, we had a new Alzheimer's drug in 15 years. One comes out and it gets pulled from the market right away because there's side effects. And so you kind of start looking into this and you start realizing that brain disease, with how complex it is where do you start? What are you trying to really do? And so they kind of segmented the brain and trying to treat little components of what you would call brain dysfunction. Instead of just saying, hey, let's make the brain healthy, let's keep the brain from getting diseased or have any dysfunction, and then all these applications that the brain is in control of would be functioning properly. So it does make you kind of wonder, and then you start looking into, well, what exactly are the symptoms that we would look at for saying, hey, I might have a brain disease, or my brain might not be functioning as well as it can. And so, of course, they're the obvious ones. When people have seizures, or people have, any neurological conditions such as, numbness or tingling in their body, that's pretty obvious. Chronic headaches. These are very obvious signs that you have something going on, inflammatory or some other disease process that is breaking down in your brain that makes it pretty obvious you got to get it evaluated. But when we start looking, you can even get into dizziness and drowsiness and stuff. But when you start thinking about the other aspects of what the brain does, you got to start thinking, okay, well, you don't really connect mental illness with brain disease, but yet it is. And so you look at, when you start looking at what are some of the other signs that I could have brain disease, well, what couldn't be associated with brain disease? Let's look at it that way. Obesity tied to brain disease, depression tied to brain disease, mental illness of all kinds, anxiety, PTSD, all of this is associated with brain neurosignaling. So you can get into every pretty much chronic disease, and your command center is going to have some involvement with it. So it seems pretty logical to think that way, but yet when we are out there looking at what we can do to maximize our health and wellness, we get too wrapped up into the idea that, hey, you don't really think about the brain. You don't think about the brain causing all of these lapses. You can even get down into, well, if you're in a bad relationship, if you're not happy with your job, if you're not exercising, if you're angry all the time, all of these things have some component that's going to tie back to your brain function. And I'm going to explain that. So as we start to dissect into this whole idea of brain health, let's start looking at what are some of the potential causes of why we have issues with our brains. So I always talk about just our health as a society. We look at just chronic illness, and this can make some sense out of why we have what I would say is an epidemic of brain disease. Is you look at what causes. One doctor that I met, he kind of explained it really well, and he said the main problems we have in America, there's two main problems we have in America that pretty much is associated with causing all disease: chronic inflammation and insulin resistance. Right? It makes sense. Chronic inflammation, if you have inflammation in your body, which is caused by our diets, by lack of exercise, other habits such as smoking and drinking and different things that can cause inflammation. And then you look at insulin resistance, which is just having our insulin is not capable to manage our sugars because we're overpowering it with too much processed foods and too much carbohydrates, and our body cannot, it becomes resistant, our insulin becomes resistant to being able to process those sugars. That starts to become inflammatory as well. And when you look at the stats, we have about 10% of the population is diagnosed with diabetes, okay? And then there's another 40% of the population that has insulin resistance. And so now you're looking at half the population has a sugar problem, and that is obviously directly correlated with inflammation. And then there's other people that don't necessarily have diabetes, but still can be obese or insulin resistance, and still could be obese, could not be getting the right amount of sleep or quality of sleep. Less than 30% of our adult population in the United States gets even exercises regularly, and of those people that exercise regularly, of that 30%, only I think 15% actually, I should say, exercise, and only 15% actually exercise regularly. So we're an undersleep society. We don't exercise. Half of the population has insulin resistance or diabetes, and then on top of that, 70% of the population is on one or more pharmaceutical. So 70% of the population is on one or more pharmaceutical. So that could be 4, that could be 5. And so you start looking at just our disease state, and you got to look and go, okay, well, why isn't that pretty obvious why we have so much depression, anxiety, substance abuse, unhappy people? I think most of the country just kind of rides in what they call a dysthymic state, which is just this underlying depression. It's not disabling. You can get up and function, but you're just stuck. Your tape goes on and on and on. You get up in the morning and go right into the day. Everything stays the same. You're not feeling amazing. You're not feeling horrible. You're just feeling okay. Well, who in the heck wants to settle for okay? I mean, that is where we realize that we have brain disease. If your brain is not capable of telling yourself that settling for okay is a right choice, that's brain disease. And that is the problem, is that we all settle for just being okay instead of, we forget that we have this ability to seek happiness and seek health. And wellness is happiness and health and spirituality and productivity. So we lose sight of the fact of what we were used to, and we chalk that up to old age, instead of really understanding that it's really that we are developing slowly brain disease. And when your brain is not capable of understanding this, you're stuck, and time keeps going by and the years keep going by until you finally look and say, geez, I wish there was something else I could do. Or, you find someone else that says, well, how are you looking? How do you feel so great? How are you so happy all the time? And most of the time, these people, you can tell why they are, because you can tell that they are doing a lot of things right. Are you on any medicines? No. Do you exercise regularly? Yes. Do you get good sleep? Yes. I mean, so it's kind of a little bit of common sense. So now that you sorry, it's hot in here, so I wish someone would go turn on the air conditioner, but anyway, so let's talk a little bit about this. So now when you start realizing that we are an unhealthy society, this insulin resistance and chronic inflammation and being on pharmaceuticals all contribute to us kind of getting into this situation where we get this slow brain disease. And then what we can't predict is what is going to happen to our brain over time. If we're already inflamed and our body's inflamed and we're in, which could be through, like I said, depression, substance abuse, drowsiness, fatigue, headaches, all sorts of different symptoms. What happens over years and years and years? So what will happen if you get on a medicine that's a Band-Aid? So say you have headaches and you're taking Advil just to get rid of the headaches, but you're not fixing the headaches. You've got depression, but you're on an antidepressant, but you're not fixing the depression. You got diabetes, you're taking insulin, you're taking metformin, you're taking some drugs to help with your blood sugars, but you're not fixing the blood sugar problem. So you can see over time, you're just letting these chronic ailments just continue to build and build and build. And of course, you can't see any of this happening because you're taking Band-Aids to fix them. And then at some point, you get a major cause of saying, okay, something's definitely wrong. And then by that time, they say, hey, you got these tangles around your nerve endings and you have some other condition of the brain that now is going to require some drugs, but these drugs don't really cure anything, as we said. So now you're in a pickle, right? So let's make sense of this. So again, we kind of understand what the brain is, what it's good for, what it does for us. We also understand some of the problems that we have that are slowly causing brain disease. And then now we have to look and say, okay, well, what are we going to do to change this? Well, let's also look. Pharmaceuticals. So you have, United States prescribes more drugs than any other country. 2 of the top 5 drugs prescribed, the number one is a statin, a cholesterol-lowering medicine, and in the top 5 comes another one, which is a proton pump inhibitor, which is for people with antacid. When they prescribe these drugs, they don't tell you to go change your lifestyle. They just say, hey, you have high cholesterol, here's a drug for that, and you're going to be on that for the rest of your life. Oh, hey, you have heartburn or you have ulcers in your stomach. They don't tell you to stop eating 2 hours before bed, cut out the alcohol, cut out the processed foods, cut out the caffeine, start exercising more, start alkalinizing your diet. They prescribe a drug and you go take it. What they don't tell you is that you either have to do your own research to go find these things out, because they're not going to let you know that there is well stated that cholesterol is exactly the most important contributing compound for your nerves. It basically is what creates that myelin sheath, which is the protecting around your nerve endings, and also is very key for the production of dopamine and serotonin, which are your happy hormones. So cholesterol, if you get on a cholesterol-lowering medicine, which we prescribe more than any other country, it's the number one most prescribed drug, if that directly lowers your cholesterol to a point where you don't even really know, maybe you don't have any cholesterol. But if that's decreasing your cholesterol that's responsible for brain health and responsible for your neurotransmitters that make you happy, can you start to see how if you're on those drugs and you're one of those people that are prescribed these drugs, that directly could be affecting your brain health. And also people that are on statins also get deficient in a nutrient called ubiquinol or CoQ10. That has also been shown to stimulate the production of mitochondria in your brain. Remember, we said mitochondria are what causes energy in our brain. Then you look at proton pump inhibitors, omeprazole, very obvious to know that it decreases both magnesium and B12. Go look at both of those ingredients. Magnesium is a relaxation mineral. It's essential for neurotransmitter function and neuroplasticity, which neuroplasticity is the ability for our brain to heal and make the neural signaling more powerful. B12, very obviously we know that what its effects are on our neurological system. So those are just two examples. You get into depression, antidepressants, and now they just came out with a study to say that they don't even think antidepressants or serotonin has anything to do with depression, which again, remember I'm saying that I think mental illness is just is a symptom of brain disease. And so, so now you get on antidepressants, and most of the people that get on antidepressants gain weight. Gaining weight is going to increase your chances of diabetes, it's going to increase your chances of having heartburn, and it's going to increase your chances of having inflammation. And so you can start seeing that pharmaceuticals is not necessarily the answer, because they're band-aids and never let you get to a final cure so that your brain can actually start functioning the way it's supposed to. So understanding that you're going to have to be a little bit more autonomous to actually get to the bottom of these things, you need to start looking at some of this stuff's available. That one article on cholesterol, they put a big article out in 2012 that said that even one day of a cholesterol lowering medicine, a statin, can decrease your myelination in the brain. And so it doesn't matter if it's one day or if it's 3 years. Most people that get put on both of those medications don't have an endpoint. So now we're getting somewhere. We're making some progress here. So now as we start looking into what can we do, what can we do to make our brains healthier? Well, you know what I'm going to say. I'm definitely going to talk about lifestyle, but there's other things that you can do. One is take a self-evaluation and look at yourself and say, okay, if I'm on medicines, what medicines do I have to be on? Just because your doctor says that you need to be on these for the rest of your life, that's because they do not believe that you're going to defy statistics and actually change your lifestyle so that you can get off of them. So if you're on medicine, you want to do whatever you need to do so that you can start getting off of some of these medicines that have a direct and proven way that it can actually be harmful to your brain health. The second thing is while you're getting off those medicines, that means you're making good lifestyle changes to support that. Now, what are some other things that you can do? Start looking at your habits, start looking at, so we talk about lifestyle, sleep, diet, and exercise. You got to get exercise 3 days a week. You got to get quality sleep. So that's managing your behaviors and creating some sort of a discipline to create a cycle. Not drinking alcohol 2 hours before bed, making sure you don't eat food a couple hours before bed, trying to alkalinize your diet a little bit, which is basically getting rid of processed foods. And then just that alone is going to increase your chances of having better cognition. So when you start suffering from focus and memory loss, depression, these are things that are telling you, saying, okay, you need to reevaluate and start making changes. So getting off your medicines, improving your lifestyle, and then what supplements are you taking? Well, we talked a little bit about B12. We'll talk, and another one is B9, folic acid or methylated folate. These are products that you can get in a supplement. I think everybody should be on a B vitamin, especially one that has a methylated form of B12 and folate. That is going to improve your production of glutathione, which is our body's master antioxidant. And about 60% of the population have a methylation defect that doesn't even allow you to take the B12 and folate from your food and supplements and convert it into a usable form or methylate it. And that methylation in these B12 and folate are directly responsible for creating glutathione and helping in reducing homocysteine levels, which can be inflammatory. Another one is magnesium. Just supplement it, especially if you've ever been on a proton pump inhibitor or had antacids that you've been prescribed. Omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D3, and CoQ10. So we talked a little about them. These are supplements that you can take. I just say you get a good mineral product that has magnesium, zinc, copper, selenium, manganese, iodine. You can just get one product that has a lot of these in there and then supplement with the other ones. Now, what else can we do besides that is then you start to get into some prescription therapies. And so if you are someone that has suffered from some of the symptoms of brain disease and you're really trying to get back your cognition, whether it's for work or just trying to reduce your chances of having any sort of brain disease in the future and just being more capable and more productive in your life. And again, remember, as your brain heals, that also increases your chances of changing behaviors, emotions, and thoughts that are going to allow you to also reach that maximum vitality. And so some of the other therapies that you can see, like TeleWellnessMD, some of the therapies that we like to consider, dihexa. It's supposed to be very similar to brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is the brain in the protein in our brain that helps with neuroplasticity and regenerating new nerve pathways. There's Cirax. We got NED, of course. NED is my favorite. You're gonna hear me talk about that all the time. In the most simplest way to look at our bodies, it all is energy demands. If we are in an energy abundance, we are going to do very well. But as soon as you start to get into an energy deficiency, that is where you start to lose the battle of aging. So NED, there's another one called MOTS-c. That's a mitochondrial derived peptide. Amazing. You only have to do that for 10 weeks, 2 years out, 2 times out of the year. And then, I like Mind Drive. That's a product I worked on for a long time. I put it up there with any of the other nootropics, but again, you're going to see that this symbol here on this bottle, this little brain here, that's on our ketamine clinics, that's on our supplement bottles, that's on our carb rep program. That is the reason that brain is there, is it has a puzzle piece. It has a heart EKG tracing. It has a guy running. It has a yin and yang. I mean, the brain is the balancing command center, and everything that we're doing now is really focused on brain health, because when your brain is healthy, it is then capable of making the decisions in a self-serving way. We have an innate response that we have to protect ourselves. But when our brains start to get diseased, we lack the ability to even have those considerations. Our thoughts just become patterns, and we're not able. That is what brain disease is when you're stuck and you can't get yourself out of it. That is not how we are supposed to function. That means there's something blocking your ability to make solid decisions. And so as your brain starts getting healthier, you make better decisions, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a positive health cycle, and you dig yourself out while you're getting off of some of these meds, and the end result is going to be a happy you. Happiness is the end product of a healthy brain. And so in our quest to stay out of the hospitals, to try to maximize our time, maximize our energy, really taking pride of who we are and how our bodies function, that is your exit. So just don't forget that the brain is what drives and makes the rest of the body work. So when you get a healthy brain, it will start to make the decisions that it's supposed to do, which means you're going to put a cork in your mouth and stop eating crap. But when you don't have the capabilities and you don't have access to those decisions, you're going to keep doing it over and over again. And so just think, if that's all you have to think about, remember the brain is what controls emotions, thoughts, behaviors, and then of course the rest of our natural innate body responses. But if that's what it does, then you have to get your brain healthier if you are not making good decisions for yourself. Everybody should be the same. We all have a very similar blueprint. So why someone has figured out how to make healthier decisions is because their brain is in a healthier state. It's not that we're magic. It's just that for some reason our brains are in a healthier state, giving us access to these decisions to be able to dig ourselves out. So I think this was a big day of awareness, just so you guys to start understanding that this is logical of why we're in the situation we are. So if you want to get a different result for yourself, if you want your brain to feel better, if you want your body to respond differently, it's going to start with right here. And so hopefully that we hit a bunch of different areas about the brain that is going to make sense to you about how and what you can do to start making your brain healthier so you can start seeing things differently. And of course, the main and important thing about brains is happiness. If you're in pursuit of your own happiness, you are going to find yourself on a completely different path. And that is the end result of ultimate brain health. And if you get your brain healthy, it will direct you on autopilot. That is how powerful that brain is. So again, thanks again for listening to me. I ramble, so I apologize, but I try to get as much information in as I can. Sorry about my sweaty lip, but I will find out what's going on with that. Anyway, must mean my mitochondria are really running really powerful today in my brain. Anyway, so again, thanks again. We'll see you in a couple weeks with another Q&A with Dr. A. And if you guys have any topics you want me to discuss, please send them in. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week. Thank you.